Okay, are we ready to go?
Take it away, RJ.
Yeah. That theme music, I was getting all Sunny and Cher flashbacks on that one. So, woo! Another day of ups and downs. Temperature has been wobbling all over the place here in Spokane. We've been oscillating between 80 and 60, like in an afternoon, and rainstorms materializing, and so yeah. Anyway, um, we Jackson is here, and Tornado Pelt and TD Lane. Hi, everybody. I realize that Jackson is college age. I am an old retiree fart. If we averaged our age, we're middle aged. Ah, well, what can I say? Anyway, as those of you who've been following the show have known, we are going through Replacing Darwin, the older edition of this magnificent tome by our friend Nathaniel Jeanson, who is not our friend, and it is not a magnificent tome. It's a piece of crap. But at any rate, I'm analyzing it at the source level because it doesn't have an index. It doesn't have a reference bibliography, which makes it kind of hard to track down stuff. So I'm assembling.
How many sources are we up to per page?
Oh, we're still at 1. And yay. And he's still in the filling in background information stage. I just hit another one of his monster footnotes where he has a whole string of things. And I have nothing wrong with monster footnotes. I've done monster footnotes. We did monster footnotes in the book, Jackson and I did. But this one is...
It led to the boxes.
Yeah, and so we've got to go through to find out why he's drawing on the particular sources that he is, and we've got some examples of that for you. One of them was a real golden oldie. That I hadn't really even spotted before, by Mirsky and Reese, on one of the earliest bits in the 1950s of spotting the connection between DNA and genes. That there seemed to be kind of a relationship with the number of genes there were and the amount of DNA you had in the organism. And so this was just a couple years before the structure of DNA was discovered. And it was kind of a funky little paper to deal with. But the one that jumped out at me was one from Edward Trifonoff on the earliest pages of bioinformatics. And it happened to allude to the early selfish DNA arguments of Orgel and Crick, and also Doolittle and Sapienza, which unfortunately I was not able to link to because they were not open access. However, it turns out Richard Sternberg has been riffing off of those same points, and so I put some linkages to some of the stuff that he's been fiddle farting on. He's got a thing where he alludes to that in the Why of the Fly, Why Reflections on Junk DNA. And it all goes on to the idea of how much of the genome does stuff. And what was interesting reading those original papers is, yes, they were pointing out that there's like huge swaths of DNA that doesn't seem to do anything. They didn't preclude the possibility that retro elements could end up doing something. And so it's interesting that those quotes tend not to be mentioned, although Sternberg did actually acknowledge that Crick and Orgel and company did allow for functionality in some of these retro elements, but boy, they didn't make a heck of a lot on it. So anyway, those are put up as little side issues. But the funky thing about Trifonoff is we cited Trifonoff in our book, Jackson, remember? On the coding system and the early stages of the codes and what DNA or what amino acids were associated with which codons. And it's curious, I'll be curious to see whether or not Jeanson, writing in 2017, pays any attention to that, because he got a chart of the amino acid of the DNA nucleotide codon chart in the book, perfectly fine, but he doesn't seem to be curious about why are some of them multiple codons and some of them not, which of course is the issue that Trifonoff and that was going into. So maybe you don't want to bring up that the Trifonoff piece was actually quite nice, because it was a very nice summary of how they were figuring out how to sequence nucleic acids and gels and all this kind of crap that they were working on. And that's just good material to work with. I was just spending, if my brain is slightly blurry, I've been spending the last hour following up on our also not good pal, Sal Cordova and John Sanford, because Colton, in an external feed that we were discussing on stuff, and Dan Cardinale's next installment of his demolition of Sanford in the debate, Colton made a point about they'd all remembered Sanford dissing Darwin in a video. And I went, ooh, can I find that? And it turns out to have been one that Sal Cordova linked to, that comes from this Ratio Christi thing that Sanford is associated with. So this was the first chance. I don't have the link of it in the thing, but we'll be linking to it eventually in.
So would it be inappropriate surmising to say that Sanford was trying to lay down a diss track?
Just about, yeah.
And let me guess, it was a total fail at every point and at every level.
Just about. It took. I got about over a page of small print just for like 3 minutes of what he was going on about. I had to put a verbatim transcript of when he was bringing up fossils. You'll all be shocked to find out what he talks about. He says that Darwin says he gives him a backhanded compliment. He says, though Darwin is for the most part correct, because there he said in his book was that the fossil record is the strongest evidence against his theory, that he actually presents a very good case against his own theory based upon 3 phenomena. And the first is the Cambrian explosion, which he doesn't actually talk about in the origin of the species.
He really doesn't.
No, because they didn't know it was an explosion.
They didn't even
All
know.
he knew about was trilobites.
The lowest layers they had were Silurian. They didn't even have Cambrian layers at that point.
Yeah. So Sanford is mushing together modern apologetics as if that was the issue that Darwin was facing. The second one is stasis, where again, he's kind of channeling modern versions of this. He's on a little bit firmer ground in terms of Darwin, who was expecting small gradations on things. And of course, he brings up the coelacanth and living fossils.
We will have a lot to say about that in the next
I remember. In fact, I
Rocks.
woke up this morning and my little brain chute said, oh shit, I've got a whole big stack of material on Tiktaalik and vertebrate appendage stuff in a little packet all downstairs sitting on the edge of my pool table. I better make sure we add that to volume 2, because I don't want to miss all of that.
We've got a big spot in, a fair bit of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 is dedicated to the fish tetrapod transition.
Oh, and you will be thrilled to know that Sanford has demolished all of that retroactively.
I thought you said I'd be thrilled.
According to Sanford, let me find the little thing. It says, we've also looked very carefully at Tiktaalik, which is one of the main claims of a transitional form. And Tiktaalik is not a transitional form to a land animal. It was a bottom-dwelling fish with a morphology very similar to the bottom-dwelling fish today. I'm reading literally what he says. There's no evidence that it could crawl up onto the land. And so that's basically a lot of propaganda, in my opinion.
What fish is he referring to?
In other words, the whole thing is it's not because I say it's not, now accept it, or you're an evolutionist and you're going to hell.
That was quite literally what he just said, because I have read both of the original papers by Shubin et al. On Tiktaalik, and neither of them say it's like modern fish. It's like modern deep sea fish.
Where Sanford claims to have done this spectacular analysis? In the new book, I just now discovered that it's pronounced Roop, not Rupee. That Roop and Sanford wrote, the 2017 one that I went through point by point, where he did not really discuss much of anything about the development of Tiktaalik. He just flipped it off with a middle finger. And remember, neither Sanford and Roop are paleontologists.
Well, yeah, what a surprise.
I'm not a paleontologist either, and yet I know more about the subject than he does. How is it that I, a Florida kid who has no education on biology, living in the middle of bumfuck nowhere on the Gulf Coast, how is it that I know more about evolution and the fossil record than Roop and Sanford, the
is it
dual
because you're
like
curious?
Well, see, Tornado, it gets worse, because David Minton, who is a cell biologist, he writes this whole chapter about the fish tetrapod transitions, well, sort of. He tries anyways. And in this, he asks questions that are answered by the very papers he's saying don't answer anything. Like he says, they say there's no evidence of spiracles on Tiktaalik. Well, how do they know that? It says they have the top and bottom imprints of Tiktaalik. They can see it has no spiracles.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Oh, you'll love this quote from Sanford from his interview. Charles Darwin was the greatest atheist maker in history. And all you have to do is go to any atheistic website and you'll see they begin and end all of their arguments with evolution. I'm going to do a little test on that.
The guy who
find out how many atheist websites actually do start and end their discussion with Darwin.
Because the guy who said, "Don't call me an atheist," is the greatest atheist maker. Okay.
I think he's doing this in the same way his propensity for glib generalization and false assumptions, which is what he was doing in his genetic entropy book, except for technical literature.
Wait. Did he actually say that Darwin was A, an atheist maker, and B, is used on all atheist websites?
Yes, Darwin is our deity. We bow down. We genuflect before Darwin's statue.
In fact, explicitly says that there are some people who just that for them Darwin is, quote, an object of worship for many people, unquote.
Drink.
I just, you know what? I can't even. I mean, definitely. The Origin of Species is my Bible. Whenever I have to swear, I put my hand on Origin.
And on the Origin, yeah.
I swear.
Oh, and you'll also be interested to know that according to Sanford, that Darwin was, quote, in no way a cool guy. He was a racist, a eugenicist, a sexist.
Drink!
This is like he's mad that Darwin stole his juice box as a kid. This is what this sounds like.
That and well, the main thing is it's clear Sanford is just absorbing in the same way that Donald Trump absorbs orange skin, that he's accepting all of the tropes of creationist apologetics, because they go on and on. Bergman and others go on and on about his supposed racism and his connection to eugenics, and Klinghoffer and the bunch over at the Intelligent Design Movement do exactly the same thing. Oh, and he even repeats the claim that Darwin didn't come up with evolution on his own, that he just stole the idea from Blythe.
In other words, this guy is trying to paint Darwin to be an asshole.
The funny thing is, it's okay. If we had nothing on Darwin prior to Origin, like Origin was just his first work, we have nothing prior to that. Okay, you could try to make that, or with Peter Matthews, or a couple other people who kind of come up with sort of natural selection ideas before Darwin. Okay, maybe you could sort of make that argument. It still wouldn't be true, but it would at least be plausible if we had nothing on Darwin prior to Origin. The problem is we have stuff on Darwin prior to Origin. We have stuff on Darwin from the 1830s. We can see literally the entire progression of his thoughts on evolution. He kept multiple journals. He wrote books on corals and the geology of South America and volcano islands and all this other stuff. We know what he thought over time.
And how vastly more detailed his argument was than all the ones he's supposedly cribbing from. By the way, I put a link in. I have a mention because all of this stuff, Blythe, and if you're wanting to find out about that stuff, you can look up tip 1.5 at my wordpress.com tip website, because I have a whole bloody section on the dissing Darwin thing.
I have a question regarding Mr. Roop and Sanford.
Yeah.
I should say Messrs. Roop and Sanford. Do they actually claim, are they intelligent design proponents?
They're
beyond that. They're both creationists, full blown. But they're very shy about it. Well, I have to say, technically, Roop has never said how old he thinks the Earth is. But it's critical to Sanford's argument that genetic entropy is the fall of man and the post-flood period 4,500 years ago, because he literally argues he and Jeanson and these other crowds are literally contending that all of the mastodons and mammoths are appearing after the flood.
Well, I might have some questions then. Of course, there's the other issue that we have radiometric dating.
Oh, but
Mind
that's
you-
all wrong. That's all wrong, Tornado.
You just
You're
made it up,
falling into
Tornado.
your evolutionary propaganda thing to
Am I
accept
late?
those nasty little carbon
Oh, hi,
atoms as
TD
being
Lane.
serious.
Hi, I'm late.
It's
Also,
easy.
sounds like a lot of evolutionary assumptions here.
Now,
Yeah.
of course,
It is.
the whole thing I brought up with the whole intelligent design thing is, honestly, if I were the intelligent designer who made man and everything, I'd also give Adam a few more playmates, because we'd have all the foxes and all the land-dwelling mammals. I should say land-dwelling mammals. That's an important distinction.
You have to admit, though, more orgies in the Bible is probably what they don't need. But Cecil B. DeMille would have been really happy to include them in his films.
We should have
should
supernumerary memories. We should have like the memories all the way down.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah. Like some of those Babylonian gods
Yeah,
and stuff.
guys,
These
I
overly
have a point that I want to
a
make.
sudden surfeit of mammary glands and tits.
Yes.
I was going to say that the issue is I would have basically fox people, cat people.
Well, we've
and-
got the furries today, so you'd already have a ready-made.
Yeah, basically an
We're
entire
making
planet-
Jackson. We're making Jackson nervous.
an
I'm too
entire
young for
planet
this
full of
chat.
Anthropomorphic creatures who are
Yeah.
cross-compatible with humans. That's
I
what
go
I,
for-
as an intelligent designer, would make, and that would be
But
the
the
perfect
irony
planet
is
for me.
that of course your intelligent designers don't go after radiometric dating. By the way, here's a source methods tip. For all
Bibbidi
practical
bibbidi.
purposes, anybody who makes a big deal about radiometric dating in any way, shape, or form is dipping from young Earth creationist apologetics. They're not getting it from Michael Behe. They're not getting it from anyone in the intelligent design movement, because they don't give a rat's ass about chronology or the means of determining them. They
That's
accept-
literally true.
literally. Yeah,
Yeah.
including with rats.
I went
Oh.
from watching Plan 9, Plan 9 from Outer Space to
You humans are stupid,
listening
stupid.
coming over here to evolutionary assumptions and biblical orgies.
And lots of titties.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Oh, Vesta points out when she was a theist, she accepted evolution and Big Bang. Absolutely. In fact, in the intelligent
do.
design movement and the old Earth creationists, the Reasons to Believe crowd with Fazal Rana and all that, the Big Bang is their shibboleth. They really want that, let there be light, Big Bang, boop, and anchor all of that in theology, because they can get that anthropic argument going, and that's one of their major arguments for God. So theoretically, creationists are defusing that by disconnecting all of that anthropic evidence, and of course all the cosmology that goes along with it. We'll be discussing that in the new book too.
And doodle.
Yes. Oh, indeed, Lou. And the thing about
Indeedly-bibbidi.
creationism is that they take the same method as their intelligent designers, but they go whole hog with it. They pick the little ball up and run straight off the field and into the ocean, because they have so much more that they need to defend. Whereas your younger, the older creationists and intelligent designers don't bother about the flood, and they don't bother about really how species come about, and they don't really bother too much about why extinctions would be there. What God creates this Jurassic theme park and then lets it muddle along for 100 million years and then cataclysmically destroys it, or is it just falling apart because he was neglecting? He was going over to the Andromeda and getting busy there and forgetting what's going. No, it's a mess.
That reminds me of the show Miracle Workers with Steve Buscemi and Daniel Radcliffe, where Steve Buscemi is God, and he's like, yeah, I don't really want to do Earth anymore. I want to make this planet that's like this. It's like a bar. It's an island bar.
Well, if you've ever seen the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the TV version, rather than the shorter film,
I've only read the book.
Slarty Bartfast, the man who designed Norway,
Yeah.
really, when he was making the new replacement Earth after it had been destroyed by the Vogons, really wanted a lot of fiddly bit fjords.
Yep, you like the fjords.
The mice were not too keen upon there being so many fjords, but he likes fjords. Slarty Bartfast likes fjords.
The thing that I loved about the first book was how, like, the potted, he said, Douglas Adams is like the potted plant It's like a potted plant and a whale are created.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they
When
both-
they use the
fall,
infinite improbability
and
drive.
and the plant's like, oh no, not again.
Yes.
And
yes.
you eventually later, it's like this one creature that keeps getting killed over and over and over by the protagonist, and he eventually tries to kill him.
In the in the TV version, they have a thing where the narrator is saying, many scientists believe that if we understood why the pot of begonias thought that, we would know a great deal more about the operation of the universe.
Yeah, it's just, which I love, because it was he was also like a fly at one point, and like was it Arthur? Isn't that his name?
It was
Arthur
petunias,
Dent?
not begonias.
And he like swats the fly or whatever. It's like it's always he just keeps killing this one guy over and over.
There's
I
a
love
character, Joe Bliffstick, in the old oh good God, maybe Dick Tracy or one of the others. And oh, idiot says, RJ, long time, man. Well, you're back now. And by the way, Scientist Mel, you may need to keep your sign up in case we go too digressing on science fiction motifs here. But the
Planet of Furries. Planet of Furries.
Douglas Adams is not a bad character to bring up in this context, because first of all, he and Richard Dawkins were enormously close friends. They came to be quite such, and in fact, at Douglas Adams's funeral, Dawkins, I think, read the eulogy. So they were connected, and Dawkins, or science and evolution issues pervade the whole concept of the Hitchhiker's Guide.
There was Douglas, I think it was Douglas Adams. He wrote some kind of book about like the biodiversity of Earth, and Dawkins quoted a bit of it in the Ancestor's Tale regarding the fauna of Madagascar.
Yeah, he had a little science side on there, which is it's a thing that hopefully more people will be making use of. When you see Brian Cox, the physicist, doing a stand-up comedy show with Eric Idle of the Monty Python series for the BBC, you realize
Eric Idle. Are we talking the same guy who does the voice of Wreck-Gar in Transformers 1986?
It could be. I couldn't say.
Let me look that up. I need to see this.
Voiceovers are very lucrative for people to do, and TV commercials the same way. That actors can often make much more money doing a commercial or a voiceover than they would, and they can come in their skivvies because they're just recording voices. They're not seen.
That's how I feel in my summer class right now. I've not worn pants one class.
Well, before we get to the luminous part 2. Let me thank my patrons, because I am still gobsmacked and delighted that of all the people who have supported the project and who continue to do so in spite of our nervous times here, where I could easily imagine people might not want to do that. So we've got our colleagues Hendril and Eric Rowley and Benjamin Simpson at Speed of Sound, Surus and Zeshi. Shut up, a tornado, until I'm done. We got Travis Adams, Ian Chen, Convert Me, Eat Meal, James Fitzwater, History Minor, Ralph McFadden, Apologia. We got our assistant researchers, Mike Apple, Doranku and Todes Real. We got our friends, Daniel and Steve Bauman and Marigale Beddoes. Insects Are Cool, Devin Reeves, Morton Nielsen, Paul the Skeptics, Puffalephagus, Bo Rasmussen, Alex Stone, Paul Williams. And I will continue to thank the legacy patrons who could help at one point or other, but weren't able to always. Jen and Jody and John and Keith and Andrew and Dyer and Yui Ferminick and Mona Haywood and Brad Johnson and Daniel Johnson and Nana and Staggles and Sun Sky Stone and Ugly Trum and Truths and Everett Vincent and Sewer Weiss Bloom. All of you are wonderful, helpful. It means that I can do ink, paper, and food, like 3 meals a day and all of that stuff, and pay bills. It's extremely nice to be able to do that sort of thing. And also for those who have not yet acquired The Rocks Were There Volume 1 to give you preparation, because you'll want to read all of this before we get to Rocks Volume 2. You don't want to have to wait. Binge reading science works can be really painful. We can appreciate that. But nevertheless, I think from what I can see, from what we are starting to assemble, Volume 2 is going to be as meaty as Volume 1 is. Plus, we're going to be having all that stuff on H1N1 in human evolution material. We're going to have more stuff on Sanford and Jeanson. including Dan Cardinale's delicious takedowns of genetic entropy, which we'll be alluding to. So that's ways that we can bring material in that are updates, and the newer technical literature that's popped up in just like the months since we've finished the first book. Science keeps on moving forward. Isn't that odd, Jackson?
Yeah. I have started on the intro because I've actually done most of chapter 4 because I thought that was going to be that was in our little spreadsheet or whatever, the first chapter or the third chapter for a while, the first one I'm going to write. And so I have most of that one written. So then I have to go back and write.
And I still got
1.
large segments of the flood history stuff already organized. It's just a matter of, but
one of the things I was going over, because in our first chapter, we're going to be giving sort of reprise of what we did in the last book, but also we're doing additions, things that have been updated because the science
this
never
will be
stops.
a perfect. So that's going to probably end up a pretty good sized chapter, just reprising what we did in the first book plus the new information.
Yeah. Yeah, it would mostly be the new information. Plus, we'll have something to say about James Cole's review of our book, which is just hilarious. And thanks to Colton, he gave us an article because we were, it was mostly me. I was not aware that there were any papers by creationists actually addressing index fossils. And there is one. I was wrong. There is one exists.
Isn't that nice to know? Yeah, that's often the way it is, that somebody will, the same thing with taphonomy and a lot of these other technical issues, there's just a little bit on it, like that one paper that Aaron did on the reptile mammal transition, therapsids and all that. They kind of tiptoe into it, and basically it's a way of flicking it aside so they don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, he does the sort of thing. He has this thing called tectonically associated biological provinces, which is in essence the same thing that Wise does, except Wise says the geologic column exists and Wood-Marap doesn't. So Wood-Marap proposes this thing, which is basically like, the Mesozoic is one environment, the Cenozoic is another environment. It's basically the same thing. It still doesn't really explain how index fossils exist,
indeed,
but
even with the what you actually have, other than the lurches as you move from one extinction event to another, that especially if the period lasts for quite a long time, you have an enormous range of microclimates that are existing in the various regions.
And
so
chemistries,
and they can piece all of these little things together, as opposed to the cartoon versions that you get on there. Anyway, part 2 of the show brings us back to the debate that I was involved with Jesse and Madsen on such like, and on creationism, where they were revealing more about that. That was a weird
that
discussion.
was whack.
Yeah, and you may recall they brought up at one point the Wedge of Aiud. This sounds like something from a sword and sorcery novel. This sacred wedge of Aiud was brought up from the depths. Anyway, supposedly it's, if you read some of the lore, and this started filtering up about 2016 period, that a piece of a spaceship had fallen off long ago, and the aluminum part ended up in a field in Russia or Bulgaria or somewhere, where they dug it up in the course of things, and this has caused consternation and angst amongst the normal scientists. Bum, bum, bum. And it was just amazing, the number. I put links to quite a few of them, but my God, they were pointing up on the Ancient Code website, Unexplained Mysteries website, Ancient Origins, Reconstructing the Story of Humanity's Past website. You've got the House of the Sun website, which includes stuff on tarot of the Philosopher's Stone. Oh, it's just interesting. And Fox News lit into it a little bit. So they're talking about investigator claims UFO wreckage is evidence alien visited the Earth 250,000 years ago. And we've got Jesse's primary source, which was from the Daily Mail, where they said, does this mysterious piece of aluminum prove UFOs visited Earth 250,000 years ago? And they have pictures of it. Even they are kind of uncertain about the dating of it and all the rest. Well, there's a so much simpler conclusion. It's that it's an aluminum part off of a Russian earth mover. It's one of the
Yikes.
little tines in the front. And there was nothing mysterious about this thing. And they've got pictures and all that to prove it. So the spoil sport here in this litany of creationism is at Rational Wiki, where they went to all the material. Oh, it's from Romania. The Wedge of Aiud, apparently it's from the location where it had been found. And I know that some of them apparently, the little twerp that's the ancient astronaut guy, the groupie of von Daniken, he's getting older now. He was going on, he was the talking head on some of these interviews that were being put out, that they just couldn't imagine that anything would have aluminum. You wouldn't make any human machine out of an aluminum. Apparently, you could make a space machine part out of an aluminum alloy, but not a human object.
Aluminum, the thing that generally melts when it goes to the Earth's atmosphere.
And also, unless it's an alloy. It has the advantage of being strong but lightweight. And in fact, if you go to which I was visiting the Kaiser Rolling Mill out in Spokane, and they now are doing lots of subcontracting for Boeing when Boeing was still building new planes, where the airframes of these things are made out of aluminum, and they're special high-grade stuff that's extremely strong but extremely lightweight, so they can trim things down, and they have these enormous frame pieces that you can pick up with one hand practically, because they're so light, but yet most of it's empty space, because the less weight you have in an aircraft, the better. Of course, if you're building
it's like Standing's brain or head. Yeah, it's
yes,
empty
indeed.
space, but it's
or well, yes, but standing for Truth's brain is positively filled with little gears and vacuum tubes humming compared to Jesse and John Maddox. You got to admit.
John Maddox is 99% hot air. So
yeah, and Jesse is below him. He's at the other end of the air outlet.
The hilarious thing is, humans wouldn't make things out of aluminum. No, it's not like we made entire planes out of it during World War II.
Oh, Sean is asking about when was this debate? Yeah, it was a ways back.
A couple weeks back.
I think I put the link in the video description to the debate, so you can follow it up there. It was just, I think, a couple months ago, in April or so, something like that.
I've got a question for you, RJ.
Yeah.
If what this person's brain was compared to, who was it now?
John Maddox.
John Maddox's brain compared to what? Who again?
Jesse, something or other.
Whose brain was could be compared to another person's with vacuum tubes and?
Oh, those Standings.
Standing for Truth. Yeah. What would my brain be compared to Jesse?
Oh, yours moves very quickly, but you do tend to cycle the same points, and you have to figure to jump to the next point periodically. That's one of the great skills that you must learn, young man.
I call you supercomputer.
Yeah,
because you can do math.
Yeah, and that mathematics is all one that I have to just labor at. So that's a skill that you want to be able to apply rigorously and make use of, because remember, the universe is what mathematics does for a living. So everything that you can know about mathematics, you are opening up. Einstein and a lot of the others had that same attitude, that you're looking into the mind of God.
Biology is just physics, and physics is just math. Ergo, biology is math. Thank you, America.
Yeah.
Good
night. And
night.
now you're into a philosophical discussion about reductionism.
We have become Platonists. Everything is numbers.
Yeah.
Except for Soylent Green, which
it's people.
Is also
Wow.
Since people are biology, and since biology is physics, and
ooh,
physics is math,
this is Galaxy Brain time.
Therefore,
we can't avoid getting back to science fiction things. Idiot says, holy crap, based on Sean's debate comment and RJ's actual mention, I'm far more lagged even than I thought.
I think the funny thing about it is, like, all of the creationists are totally anti-alien. And so for John to be on the same side as a person bringing up aliens is kind of hilarious.
Well, you have to remember, Jesse is in that kind of squishy smorgasbord worldview that will pick little bits of
it's
anomalies.
Like Alex Jones, huh?
Yeah. And so that's where cryptozoology flits into that worldview because of its connection, so supposedly to Behemoth and all of that. So there's a tremendous urge to go cryptozoology. That will link up. that'll link up with your ancient astronauts and super civilization crowds and all of that. And there's an old phrase of out of place objects that, oh gosh, I can't think of the guy that used, it's not Childress, it's another fellow that did these things. I think he's still knocking around. They still got a website of it. But anyway, it's if you have never heard of Charles Fort, this goes way back to like 1915, 1920. There was a guy who just loved, Charles Fort was a fellow who loved looking up weird stuff like grains of frogs and strange objects out of place and all of that. Yeah.
I've seen a documentary about that. They were in a tornado. It went over like a pond and just...
Anyway, that tradition continues in a lot of these out of place objects people that eventually end up in things like misinterpreting a aluminum part for landing gear from an alien spacecraft.
I just think about like, because it was in England, I think, where it goes over. It's like what do they call them, water spouts or whatever, where it goes over like a lake or a river and just suck up the little things.
And they're always stuff that are relatively small. I've never seen any water spout pick up a whale.
No, yeah, it just and this lady was like, I thought it was being pranked. There were fish all over my house.
Yeah, it happens every once in a while. It's some of the little odd features that can go along. And we forget too that there are like insects that migrate long distance up in the jet stream. They get sucked up into the high speed and they're just sitting there presumably going, okay, I'm here for a while, and then dive bomb whoop, down into the lower atmosphere, and they're like thousands of miles away from where they used to be.
Oh my gosh, could you? I just imagine them like little bullets just being shot from the cloud.
And as they go, they're passing by the begonia and going, "Hi, see you later."
And the begonia is thinking, "Oh, not again."
Oh,
Absolutely.
not again.
One of the funny lines in the Hitchhiker's Guide was when they land on the planet in the heart of gold, and they're walking around, and somebody said, "What's that?" "Oh, whale meat." Where the whale had splatted down.
Oh,
on the poor little
yeah.
planet.
The whale develops like a whole system. It's like, this is up, this is down, left,
and it's just
right.
making sense of things. Oh, that's getting bigger. My, what is that? I don't know what that is. And in the last moments of his life, as he's impacting into the ground, you feel real sorry for that poor whale.
Oh man,
what
a series.
Well, and that's also brings up one of the things that makes us theoretically human, is that you have that humor and also empathy, because he's putting you in the head of a whale or a piece of begonia, and even Marvin, the depressive robot, the genuine people personality robot.
Oh my God, I love that the God's last message to creation: we apologize for the inconvenience.
Yes, or that the adjustment that they made in the entry on Earth in the Encyclopedia Galactica from harmless to mostly harmless.
Or what was the other one? And it's like and in the beginning the universe was created. This made a lot of people angry and has been generally regarded as a bad idea.
Yeah, I love
it.
If you haven't read or seen Douglas Adams, what the hell is wrong with you? Because he has that very British wit and also the love of language. One of the things I loved was the description: the Vogon spaceships hung in the sky in exactly the way bricks don't. And so there's this convoluted, twisty, turny quality about that British sensibility. And I imagine there's counterparts of it in other languages, if you know French, although I don't think there's probably a counterpart of it in German. The Germans just get angry and invade Poland.
That's why they're ugly German truths.
Exactly. Yes. There we go. The weirdest experience I have, boy, we're way off on a digression at this point, but we might as well, is that I discovered that there is apparently, or was in the old days, we're talking 1970s, back before the Soviet Union fell and Germany got reunited, but that Berlin has its own weird sense of humor. And even though I knew the German language, I would look at cartoons that the German instructor would bring of Berlin humor, and you're going, this is funny? It was the most inexplicable. Even when you knew what the caption said, you didn't quite understand what was going on. So that tells you about even, there's the official German, Hochdeutsch, High German, That's the stuff that you learn in the schools. And you quickly discover that if you watch like actual German language movies and TV series that don't actually speak Hochdeutsch in practice, that there's regional dialects. My joke was, ich heiße Paul Schmidt, ich komme aus Süddeutschland. It comes from southern Germany, which would be Bavaria. From ich komme aus Bayern.
The Hickland of Germany.
Yeah, although it's hard to screw up German as spectacularly as poor President Kennedy did at the Berlin Wall in the inspirational moment when Ich bin ein Berliner. I mean, this is...
I am a jelly-filled pastry.
Yeah.
No, really? Oh my God. Oh no, he should have just yelled at the wall.
I suppose somebody
like
should
Reagan
do a
did.
whole show. We're out of control, Mel. I suppose one could do a whole show on the pastry connection to science. For example, there's an Austrian or German pastry called a Kringle that is actually used as the description of a genetic component.
Kris Kringle.
And anyway, it's a particular pastry form that a certain little fold that is involved in genetics, and it's repeated a lot I think it's a transposable element, but it looks like a Kringle. It looks kind of like a little donutty thing, and so they just describe it, and it's called a Kringle.
Well,
who says scientists don't have a sense of humor? Except
for
James
the
Cole.
king of jingling.
I mean, the scientist who named Ninjames, who the Meolaniid, was it in allusion to that totally red, fearsome foursome epitomizing shelled success?
Yeah, or that one the dinosaur that they named for Hogwarts.
Oh, Dracorex Hogwartsia, yeah. The dragon of Hogwarts. The Dragon King of Hogwarts, yeah.
Well, and apparently there's a bunch of snarky names that pop up in craters on the other side of the moon or stars and stuff. You know, that sometimes the scientist goes, "Oh, to hell with it! I'm just going to call it that."
Well, you can only, call so many similar-looking things approximately the same name. So
yeah, and that I think is what distinguishes modern science from the 19th century scientists, who were just serious as all get out. I don't know of any example in 19th century nomenclature when anybody was other than deadenly serious in using the proper Greek and Latin and making sure everything was accurately described. They just if whatever humor they had, it didn't show up in their nomenclature.
I don't know. I mean, I think the whole concept of the Bone Wars is kind of funny. Two paleontologists.
Oh, well, that was personality. There was just personality.
Like destroying each other.
It's
in the race to collect bones.
It's hilarious in hindsight until you realize, oh my God, they destroyed fossils.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah, and they
literally
were
lost history.
Stealing stuff from one another. It was we're talking Othniel, Marsh, and Cope, as I recall. And if you Google any of those names, let me put up. I think it's James O'Neill, Marsh. Check me. I'm just going on.
Also, trust me, if I ever get the name of fossil.
And what was Cope's first name? It started, I think, with an A.
Edward Drinker Cope.
Edward Drinker Cope. Thank you. Neither one of those has an A. I was wrong.
Marsh.
Yeah, and if you you'll find Wikipedia pages and books and articles on it. I think Stephen Jay Gould did stuff on it. It's the stuff of legend. I think even they did a section of Drunk History on the Marsh Cope dinosaur wars. If you haven't watched Drunk History, you should.
Even Mel is not in here.
Yeah. That what they do, it's simultaneously hilarious and actually not too bad history. What they get is they have a particular incident of little known history, particularly things about how people have misbehaved. Oh, you're flashing the sign. Be right back.
B or B.
And I'll talk about Drunk History while we're waiting for Mel to get back. And what they take then is often they're a comedian and sometimes quite prominent comedians, and they get them really drunk and they start talking about the story, basically improving. And then they get a cast of actors, often very prominent actors, who then reenact and mouthing the words of what's being said by the drunk person. So they have a docudrama where you're seeing what is being described. And so you'll suddenly see Abraham Lincoln like burping because the actor, the comedian who was telling the story burped at that point. And it's just a scream. I have grown very, very fond of it. They only do like about 5 or 6 episodes every year. They're snarky and completely irreverent. And they've got wonderful things where women will be playing men's parts and men's will be playing women parts, and they go after social inequalities and issues, and they're talking about racism. There's a ton of subjects that pop up in this damn series. And sometimes they're on themes. They even parodied some of the unsolved mysteries style and detective style things and that. So anyway, if you have, so now you have on your binge watch list, you've got to watch that. You need to
You
watch,
actually kind of sold me on it. I think I do want to see it now.
Yeah, and I actually fact check the material because there's sometimes I find out about it. Well, I'll go, yeah, that's a little bit of an exaggeration the way they've depicted it, but they basically got the material right. And other things where I go, that can't be true. Oh shit, that actually did happen.
I think reality. See, I think reality is always better than fiction. I defy anyone to find me like something fictional that is more interesting than actual organisms or people doing stupid things. Yeah.
Literally any fictional presidency over the current one.
Who could ever have made up the range? We're talking about, the poor creationists, they're so bloody boring because all they're doing is talking about dogs and cats and the basic critters and that. When the full range of nature is so astonishing that any designer would be simultaneously regarded as immensely inventive and crazy as hell because of all the weird things they come up with. I mean, what's this 5 sexes among fungi thing?
I'm going to make like jellyfish, but they live forever. But only certain jellyfish, not all of them.
Well, yeah, because he didn't like the others.
The rest of them suck.
Yeah, and that's another, in fact, one of the things that I would love to have in a discussion of origins element is how many designers are there? Needless to say, if you're talking with a doctrinal creationist, they've got one designer. And technically speaking, all of the intelligent designers pretty much just believe in just one designer.
Yeah.
But I just want to say jellyfish live forever, only certain species because they don't sin.
Yeah.
Hydra does not sin, but Aquiora macrodactyla, those filthy sinners.
Yeah, exactly. You see, this is the little known footnotes that were going to be put into Genesis at the time of the fall. And it's one of the blocks of stone that got dropped accidentally. And so all of that material, as Mel Brooks showed, where they had the 15 commandments, plop. The 10 commandments.
No. It's I bring you these 15, smash. 10 commandments.
10 commandments. Yeah, we're going to go with the 10 commandments. But the real world, in fact, that's one of the things that I didn't take biology in high school. So I had missed the frog dissecting and all that stuff by choice. I took chemistry and physics. And so I really didn't get caught up with an awful lot of biological material till the 1980s when I was starting to research creationism. And it was at that point when in finding out what was going on you were about to, your gasp was to say a comment.
You can finish, and then I'll say after you.
It's that when I dived into it, I'm glad I actually didn't study it back in the earlier period because I would have been saddled with a lot of material from the 60s and 70s. Instead, I was catching up on 1980s biology and paleontology directly. And wow, boy, there was a lot going on because that was around the period when they were starting to expand the number of bacterial groups and changing what was going on with the deep kingdoms and all that stuff. That it was a much more exciting thing to get into. And then in the decades since then, holy moly, the range of life that we have available. Now, Gasper, come in there, Jackson.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I was thinking about Darwin's doubt earlier because I don't know if you've seen it yet, but on the Twitter bug last night, my fellow Louisianian, amateur exegete brought to my attention, S.J. Thomason, the apologist. She penned an anti-evolution piece on her blog. Guess who she channels? Steve Meyer.
Steve Meyer. Well, there she is. This is not a terrible surprise to me. She's kind of done that stuff before. She's a Discovery Institute kind of acolyte type. It's not exactly the best argument to draw off of.
It was bad. She referenced, like, she quoted an like anonymously authored article at Evolution News that said there's a great explosion of diversity with no preceding organisms in the Cambrian explosion, notably among the orders of mammals. In the Cambrian?
In the Cambrian, yeah, those Precambrian bunnies.
Yeah, it was
it's
hilariously bad. And
I'll tell you why she could make a mistake like that.
Because she's not a biologist?
Because she has no map of time. And this is a feature, this is one of those diagnostic, the map of time, that literally all anti-evolutionists just can't wrap their heads in their own mind around the players and what's going on. So every one of them has a cartoon version. The young Earth creationists have the ark with a couple critters on it, obviously cats and dogs, definitely, and some manner of dinosaurs, and something else that we don't really want to think about too much. And please go away and don't bring up insects. And that's about it. And then the flood happens and so forth and so on. But intelligent designers and old Earth creationists have none of that. So they know kind of that life originated a long time ago, but what exactly the designer was doing that time. And then by the time we get down to early multicellular organisms, that's where we get into the issue of how many designers there were, which is the point I brought up earlier. That if you're just looking at the evidence part, wouldn't you be tempted to think that the designer of early metazoans like the Ediacara biota is a different designer than the one who just seems to like buggy things during the Cambrian?
I got it. I'm going to make Frondos rangiomorphs, and we're going to have Frondos rangiomorphs for the next 50 million years and nothing else.
Then you've got this other designer. I envisage the people that are at a bar waiting to get onto the pool table. And so until the other game is done, then the next crew comes in and they clear the thing and they clear the deck with a mass extinction. And then, okay, Mr. Dino guy. Oh, I want to make dinosaurs. I've been really wanting to make dinosaurs. And then spends the next 150 million years. And it's okay, you can make a few mammals and some archosaurs too, but just stay out of the way. And that goes on for the next 150 million years. You know, how many designers are there?
Yes.
That dinosaur guy is just making birds.
Oh, you know what? Whoever was in charge for someone was in charge for like 1 billion years making acritarchs, because why not?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they really.
I'm gonna make
stromatolites.
Yeah, I'm gonna make stromatolites.
I also want to know what kind of drugs were they on, and did they make the drugs in advance and then start? Is that why plants show up first?
Yeah, because you got to have the hallucinogens
galaxy brain time
before you have the people using them. Yeah, see, that's all. I'll go Fazal Rana or you Ross here. How providential it was for God to have created the hallucinogenic plants before Adam.
Stone Ape hypothesis finally vindicated.
Well, there weren't women yet,
frustrated atheist says that they were in a discussion with Jungle Jargon. You're a problem there right at the beginning, where he said that we had some kind of animal in the Precambrian. So I asked him for evidence. He said it was my problem to find it.
There are animals in the Precambrian, very weird animals.
Yeah,
he probably means rabbits, honestly.
Maybe.
Virtually all benthic.
Knowing jungle jargon, yeah, probably.
And that's the other bit, is that if you read up on the subject, get a book that's you can probably find them when libraries open up again and we can actually interact with things.
Amazon.
Get a good paleontology guide. You can probably find them in the science section. You maybe download a lot of the material. For all practical purposes, the technical papers are available online, so you'll be able to download those. But if you don't want to dive in to all the technical jargon, you probably need to get a general summary to get you kind of on it. And you can even riff off of good science videos, stuff that PBS puts out, and the material that Dapper Dino and a lot of people do as videos, including also a certain Jackson Wheat. who does marvelous graphics and things, way better, way more sophisticated than old RJ talking head in front of his CD collection does. But the thing is that there's many avenues to do this. And what you want to have is gradually build up a sense of what existed in the past and to realize that it hasn't all been like this. That every critter that you think of as normal stuff that you're used to, that you would find, even ones you would be seeing under a microscope, they haven't all been here all forever. And as you go farther and farther back in time, at any arbitrary point in the past, plop, pick it, billion years ago, 500 million years ago, 100 million years ago, 2 billion years ago, doesn't matter. You'll find that the life that's the world, everything about it is alien. And then as you move forward or backward, you're starting to see it becoming a little different from what you saw at that starting point. And if you keep going long enough, you're starting eventually to start seeing things that are more familiar. Oh, okay, you know. And this sure looks like an evolutionary process. Or you got a god that has a Spurgle that's got a hell of a lot of problems coming up with the right idea to begin with.
What if he creates like everything every 10,000 years? Like he
Yeah,
decides, all right, I'm going to make a whole set of fauna only very slightly different from the fauna 10,000 years ago. And then another 10,000 years from now, I'm going to create another very slightly different set of fauna.
like okay, I'm gonna make the early whales, but I'm not. Shit, I have a problem. Their nose is in front of them. They're having trouble breathing in the water. Okay, let me move it back a little ways. Let's try that one. Okay,
let's try like a fourth of the way back.
Are you saying the designer's like Steve Jobs?
Yes, there. And
like,
we're getting and mass
slightly.
extinctions are the new iPhone. That you have to throw all of your old dinosaurs and critters out and get the new models that are going to be available pretty soon. And
well,
there's
all
no
I'm
warranty.
Hearing is, well, all I'm hearing is that the intelligent designer is just trial and erroring life.
Yes, we're gonna have like
in which case it's indistinguishable from evolution
and multituberculates and a whole bunch of other little mammals, and then we're gonna have a slightly different set of mammals, but they're still mammals.
Oh, well, but then again, idiot brings up their ark never has the aviary or aquarium it would have had to have. Well, they don't bother about the fishy things at all. They don't bother about those. Those are all going to fend for themselves, except they maybe have the land ancestor of the whales on board the ark, and that it turned into the whales after the ark. There's some now new model that they're coming up with. But as for the aviary part, we know how many birds were on the ark. They've told us. I think there's like 380 or something like that kinds. Leitner has done a paper on that, a creationist paper where she delineates all of the ark animal kinds for birds. And there's the finch-ish group that includes the actual finches and their close evolutionary cousins. And so you have 1,200 species of bird, all within the single finch kind. So there would have been a single pair of those little cooing away on the ark, from which 1,200 species proliferated just since 4,500 BC when they flipped off of the ark. Isn't that amazing?
Hey, I'm going to blow everyone's mind. Darwin's finches weren't finches. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah.
They were tanagers. Haha.
Dun, dun, dun.
Darwin's tanagers. Doesn't sound as cool.
They traced them back, I think, to the grass quits of South America genetically. And so, and that's the other little thing. Why is it the designer, when there's critters on islands, even if the island is big enough to have really big fauna, none of them are endemic except for ones that can swim or fly or be blown there or wash there in stuff?
I'm going to make Galapagos tortoises, but they I will not move on this. They have to be related to the South American Chaco tortoise.
Yeah, you can't take a model from somewhere else. That would be just silly talk. You're going to have to make them all similar to the South American forms that could have got there naturally.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will not budge on this.
And you got to make sure on Hawaii that you really put those flies in play. Do you realize that like 70% of all the fruit fly species live in Hawaii?
Well, it's dang, gotta have flies, dude.
And I will also
and the pterodactyls. Yes, the wandering Jew of pterodactyls. I love that idiot.
What does that mean?
Oh, well, there's the idea for some in the Christian context, Jesus is going to come back during the lifetimes of the people he was talking to. And that, of
On a
course, has been
pterodactyl?
while. So they have a theory that one of the Jews didn't actually die, and he's become like immortal.
He became a pterodactyl.
And well, yes, well, the pterodactyls have to fend for themselves. Apparently.
Wait, that's like one of the pterodactyls that Dave Wotzel saw in North Carolina.
One of the things that I was discovering and that Colton was reminding us and various people in the side debates that were going on, that we're going to be bringing up in volume 2, is the notion that there was actually a pterodactyl that the ICR is still repeating in some of their little basement literature, the claim that Duane Gish was fielding that had been circulating in the creationist literature, that a pterodactyl was downed by some people in Arizona in 1890. Now, wait till you find out how big it was.
Wait, I think I remember that it was like, it was gigantic.
90 feet long,
Yeah.
with a 200-foot wingspan.
Yeah, I remember. I think
That's a little bit
Logic
outside
mentioned it.
pterosaur range.
I think
Which
Logic did a video
somehow
about
or
that.
other, the other newspaper in Tombstone neglected to mention,
Hold on.
and
hold on.
that newspaper never mentioned again. It's argued that the logical outcome of this is that Tombstone, which had fallen on very hard times after the fight in the OK Corral, their mines had dropped off and there was an earthquake that upset the place. And so basically they were looking to be a ghost town. So some bright-eyed guy in 1890 decided to put Tombstone on the map by claiming that a giant a creature had been shot,
Yeah.
and nobody took the bait. So Tombstone continued to deteriorate for the next 100 years.
Mel, you look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the Wandering Immortal Jew sounds like a brand new Indiana Jones film. I'm just saying, we had the Holy Grail.
That's kind of what's
He's
going
looking for
on in
Jesus.
the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade film.
Right. You had the knights. Was it the 3 knights? One brother stayed behind to watch.
Or if you made a
Grail.
musical out of it, it was I was born under a wandering Jew.
Yeah, I just don't contact Steven Spielberg or George.
We're
Lucas.
embarrassing Jackson now.
Don't do it. They went with the Mayan one with the crystal skull, and I wanted to shave my head to keep from pulling out my hair. I don't know if
I have a better ending
Didn't
for
they
that
talk about
movie.
making? Didn't they talk about making like another Indiana Jones movie where he died or whatever?
Yeah,
Weren't there
I
rumors
think
of that?
You remember Shia LaBeouf was in the last one, and that was supposed to be his kid.
Yeah,
But
and
I
they
think
kicked
he's-
him.
Yeah, I can't imagine him picking up Indy's hat and going, man.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Well, he basically left like pretty much film altogether because of a whole bunch of stuff that he was doing. So
Yes, he has issues.
Transformers 3 failed.
the last one with that I only watched that one because I thought it had Megan Fox in it, and I was wrong. My mistake.
Yeah, so we've had 4 of them. They're always
No, we've had like 6 of them.
They're visually fun to deal with.
Now,
And
of course,
actually
I have
have a-
something to say about the large pterodactyl.
Yeah.
I know what they called it. They called it Rodan.
Oh yes, of course. That's where Rodan comes from, as we all know. Now wait till we see Mothra, and then we want to have that. My favorite, I think, what is it, Ghidorah
Mothra's the
or
behemoth.
Ghidorah, the one with the turtle with the rocket engines attached to it.
Yeah,
Oh
right.
yes,
This is when you need Dapper here.
Yeah.
Dapper can tell us how this is possible in a vertebrate anatomy to have
Oh, no, he
rockets.
can tell us what
Square
they're
cube
freaking
law,
called,
square
'cause he
cube
knows this
law.
stuff.
We got a
They
little
dropped
problem up there.
nuclear bombs on them. The square cube law is invalid.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Once you put that, I just happened to watch the
History shows that
Pacific
kids
Rim
and how nature
sequel.
puts out the
Oh, I
That-
didn't see the
actually a
second
very
one.
good- had a very good cast in it that was largely wasted in a overly frenetic plot.
It has John Boyega. That's all I remember.
produced it, and it could have been better.
Let me guess. It was a colossal waste of time.
Had very elaborate visual effects in that, and an awful lot of extremely large things.
I don't think that's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, no, I have dreams that are far more exciting than the Transformers or Pacific Rim. To be
Oh,
quite
the
honest.
Transformers, yeah, that's quite.
Robot.
Although I must say, the one that they had, that's I think the most recent one, I watched that. It had a certain funky charm to it, and it also had what's his name? English actor, played
John
the-
Boyega.
Oh, yipes!
Are we on Transformers or Pacific Rim now?
Well, you brought up Transformers. I was talking Pacific Rim. Fortunately, hopefully, there will never be a third Pacific
That's
Rim
what
movie.
is the guy that I said.
Yeah.
It's John Boyega.
Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins. I was thinking of.
Oh, Anthony Hopkins. He was in it.
He's
Really?
he's in the most recent Transformer movie, and he's actually quite funky. And
Wait,
he's got some charming bits
Transformers?
in it. It's with Wahlberg, and
Oh God.
it's a pleasant little movie. It's
a
not deep.
pleasant-
It is not. I call them PLMs, pleasant little movie.
Transformers. It's a very pleasant movie, guys. You know.
That's like a grandpa thing to say, RJ.
They have some funky bits. They've got some quick action sequences. They've got some
Had some
charming
exciting moments.
12-year-old humor. It's a movie that didn't bore the tears out of me. I was kind of curious to see how it ended. It's not Citizen Kane.
some nice little actors in it. They did a
Sometimes
good
there were
job.
flowers, and the flowers were quite nice as well. They did a good job.
But I mean, everybody looked like they were having a lot of fun with it, and that's part of what a pleasant little movie is about.
That's
Once
fair.
you leave the
God.
movie, you won't think about it again. It's not terribly
I'm gonna
important
wrap
as a
this
motion
up.
picture,
It's
but it
11
wasn't
o'clock.
terrible.
Oh my God. I can't. I cannot,
Past
RJ.
time,
This is killing
past
me.
the hour.
I think it's time to end because
Yeah,
I don't think
we're
there's any way we
totally
can
off the
after
rails
that.
now.
I think this is going to kill me if we keep going. So
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ting. There goes the
Someday, you know what we should have? If Evolution Hour ever falls on April 1st, we should make sure to have a show devoted exclusively to discussing the various science fiction movies that we like or dislike, and that there will be blood on the sand and carnage as we're all going after and saying, "You like that movie?" And it should be just.
I was
hilarious.
thinking, like, we start off by saying, we are now young Earth creationists, but not just any young Earth creationists. We're like,
Yes.
what's like the worst one? We became members of the Westboro Baptist Church, you know? Something
Yes,
like
there
that.
we
Oh,
go.
mud flutters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something terrible, right? You know.
Forgive me if I'm kind of still fuzzy on the mud flood.
Oh my god, dude, I am too. It's just like, oh hey, there was a mud flood. It's like sometime.
What is a mud flood?
Oh my, yeah. Anyway, what was so
It's flood of
fascinating
mud.
about the standard rule, if I can kind of tighten up the little ending and get back to the kind of theme of things, is that anybody that has these, oh gosh, they've got proof that pterodactyls and human beings were together. There was one that was making the rounds some years back where you had the Civil War soldiers that had a pterodactyl and they were holding it up like that. I mean, I'm saying, I'm
Wasn't that
going,
from a movie?
oh, no, it was just a plain Photoshop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think Science Fiction Channel probably made a movie out of it. They made a movie out of every cockamamie. They then Sharknado.
Sharknado.
So
Not just
and
one.
Sharknado 2 and Sharknado 3
And
That's
like
right.
Sharknado,
five.
the Fourth
Sad.
with
Awakens.
made
Conan
five.
O'Brien.
And the Fourth Awakens.
Is he
Yeah.
doing anything else? Oh yeah, the whole. I'm sorry, I don't know why the newest 3 Star Wars movies even happened. What?
I enjoyed them. I thought they were
They were
perfectly fine
pleasant
flicks.
little movies.
They're
Yes, I
pleasant
know,
little
but
movies.
They weren't Star
okay,
Wars.
To be
though.
fair, actually, Rogue One was fantastic. Solo was at least decent. I don't know what on
I
earth
haven't
was
seen
happening.
Solo yet. Apparently, it got very mixed reviews. I'm curious.
It
to
was
see
okay.
It was
It's okay.
space version of Indiana Jones. Literally, that's it. Space
But
version
I
of
thought,
Indiana
but I
Jones.
don't really understand why they made the 3 the trilogy. I don't understand what the
Well,
point was.
they were it was part of the big structure. When Lucas worked out Star Wars, he imagined it as a giant trilogy of 3 films, 3 films, 3 films.
Well,
And
yes,
so they
but
did-
his are better. The books are better than the movies they made, and it
Well,
has better
I-
characters, better development.
I
everything.
like the last 3 films better than the first 3 prequels.
Okay, we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight, RJ.
There we go. See, we've
RJ.
got our fist fight going on here.
RJ,
Revenge of the
prequels-
Sith is the best Star Wars movie. There, I said it.
He
Star
tackles
Wars
a lot of
movies,
funky
like,
little issues.
The original trilogy is the best of it all. The prequels are garbage, but they are funny as shit when you don't take them seriously as Star Wars movies.
It's the best Star Wars movie.
The new ones are boring. They're just modern
that's true.
action.
But Rogue
that's
One
all
was
they
really
are.
good.
They're fine as
Rogue
that,
One
but
is
they're
a
not Star
proper
Wars.
war film. I
Yeah,
mean,
Rogue
it's like
One
a
was
prop. It's,
awesome.
You get to see just they always imply how evil Darth Vader is, but you don't see what he's capable of until the very end. You're like, oh my god! And people are like, are we gonna get this out? I'm like, are they gonna get it out? Yes, they are. I know this already. But you're just
Yeah,
there,
no,
are they
yeah,
gonna
you're
get the
right.
plans out? Oh my god!
You're right.
Yes, we know.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we do not have a series.
He just like decimates an entire like squad of dudes, and you can because
It's like he
that's
was
like
cutting grass. It was just like it's time to cut grass.
at
Okay.
that point,
Frustrated Atheist.
there's like one
Spaceballs
thing.
is the best Star Wars movie. That is
Actually,
correct.
he's right.
And
There you
remember,
go.
we've
I
had
apologize.
human beings who have done exactly that.
Yes.
That you had, what the hell is Justinian, who brought a whole bunch of his opponents there into a gladiatorial arena and killed them. And then Vlad the Impaler, who invited people to dinner. If you look at all the bloody scenes in the Game of Thrones, he's based a lot of that on the real history of a lot of very bloodthirsty regimes over time.
I watched every episode of Game of Thrones and I hated the whole thing, man. I'm not even gonna lie.
If I hated a show, I would have stopped watching.
But see, people are like, people say that, but did you really watch it? So I will watch everything that I like. Tarantino films, hate everything he does except for Pulp Fiction. Hate everything. I keep trying. I try really hard.
Tarantino is so individually unique in the way he puts movies together that he's in like Kubrick class. He's one of those ones that whether you like it or not, it's exactly what he wants to put on as a film.
I watched Pulp Fiction and I think it's good.
It's a pleasant
That's
movie.
the only one I like. The rest of them, I'm like, but see, if I'm gonna hate something, I'm gonna have a thorough education on why I hate it.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it was fun. It had Tim Roth in it, and I was like, oh hey, I haven't seen him in like anything except Lie to Me. Okay, but I did stop. I stopped watching The Walking Dead. I got to like season 6, and I was like, I'm done. This is just boring.
You had one Walking Dead too many.
Yeah, because it's I don't know. It's like, okay, you can only see gore. People murdered horribly so many times before you're just like, whatever.
Yeah, one more gore. Yeah.
That's kind of
let me be golden oldie here and recommend some ancient science fiction movies that will not necessarily pass muster on the special effects front by modern standards.
Lois and Clark.
No, I will throw out immediately the original Day the Earth Stood Still, which for me is and it was not seen as pure as a science fiction. It was a drama that happened to be a science fiction, and that was the very first one that the major studios put out in 1951. And The Thing from Another World, the original one, and there's a couple different versions of that one, not remakes, but just different versions of the original movie, that there's been several editions because it was edited around, and I think the current DVD has pretty much what the director's cut was at the time. That's another delicious classic. You've got
See, I mentioned Metropolis, which is I think from the 20s. It's a
1927. It's a weird movie, but it's enormously influential. And now you can also see it virtually full length. They found almost all of the original film footage, and it's like 3 hours and 15 minutes. So be prepared for that. For a silent, and if you get it on either DVD or Blu-ray, but of that extended edition, that full-length movie, it's got the original symphonic score. So you would be kick in the speakers because you're hearing the music that you would have heard in a big movie theater in a big metropolitan area that would be playing symphonic score to this giant Wagnerian music to it. It's an idiotic plot, but yet it's visually astonishing, and it was enormously influential. It affects everybody all the way down to C-3PO in Star Wars is modeled on the robot Maria in
Lucas drew a lot of inspiration from that film.
And Fritz Lang was a major director in Germany. His wife turned out to be a Nazi. He left and came to America and made kind of film noir potboilers in the 30s and
Germany.
40s. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if she was, want to be a Nazi,
he goes, "Whoops, sorry."
Okay, yeah, well, I don't want to be a Nazi.
She was a battle axe.
You boo.
She was a nasty woman, and the various movies. Fritz Lang also did The Woman in the Moon, Der Frau im Mond, which had Hermann Oberth, the rocket designer, do all the special model work and stuff. So they were trying to figure out how much actually you would need to do a rocket to space and all that. But the plot is just this weird anti-Semitic gold on the moon, and it's just an absolutely nasty little storyline that I think it probably by that time he was starting to wise up. I don't think I like you, Thea, and they parted company.
Or just go with Ed Wood, Plan B from Outer Space.
But anyway, another one that some of my super duper more recent science fiction films, everybody should see Quatermass in the Pit, which is the most ingenious alien invasion story of all times, about a Martian spaceship found in a London subway excavation. And it's one of the tautest screenplays. It's a quick movie. It's only an hour and a half long. The script is such gangbuster efficiency. There's not a missed moment. There's not a lost bit. All the plot moves with such razor sharp efficiency. It's one of the masterpieces. Nigel Neal is highly regarded as one of the most brilliant screenwriters and imaginative fiction writers, and it's so tightly packed. It's superb. Not super duper special effects by modern standards. It was done by the Hammer Films people that made all the vampire movies and all of that. And then more recently, one of my favorite Robert Wise science fictions, who also did Day the Earth Stood Still, but in addition to doing Star Trek the Motion Picture and Sound of Music and a whole bunch of other things. But in 1970, he did The Andromeda Strain, and that is one of my super duper favorite science fictions. It's really neat, and it's understated and clever, and it has scientific kick to it, because there's a critical point in the story where because the scientists have incomplete information, they make a decision that in retrospect is catastrophically dangerous, and only figure that out later on. And that tells you, that even the most brilliant scientists can make a mistake based upon incomplete information.
RJ, did I ask you? I don't know if I asked you, because I watched this movie called The Murder Express.
That I mistook for something else.
Christopher Lee and
I think I may have seen it a long time ago.
The guy who was Grand Moff Tarkin.
Oh, Peter Cushing.
Yeah, it's got them in it, and they find Mel.
Probably made by Hammer Films, because they made a lot of movies for them.
Okay, well, they find a caveman who is an alien, or he's got like an alien inhabiting his body, and
the usual.
He like has red glowing eyes, and he makes you a smooth brain by like stealing all of your memories.
Ooh.
And he just steals people's memories, and it kills them in the process. And it was
like an organic Borg.
Hilarious. And they were like, his brain is in his eye. Horror Express. Sorry, Camilla corrected me. Horror Express. And he's like, they take out his eyes, and they're like, his brain is in his eyes, and he saw like dinosaurs.
I think if nobody's seen it, Ron Perlman was in a film called The City of Lost Children. It's a French film.
That was a weird, creepy movie.
Wait a minute.
I like Ron Perlman.
Of course, with the moment you say that it's French, now you're into that. There's a whole different tradition of European science fiction.
Wait, does he speak French?
Now, of course, I gotta say, to wrap this up, what does Kent Hovind say whenever he's asked to watch a science fiction film?
What?
I'm not prepared for that.
Oh yes, he's not prepared for that. There's the list of things that Kent Hovind is not prepared for is substantially longer than the list of things he is prepared for.
Yeah, I need to call him again when I'm.
Oh yeah, please.
But we'll want to listen in now.
The first conversation I had with him was Peter told me, I have his phone number, and I'm like, wait, you can just call Kent Hovind?
I
can just call. He texts me. Merry Christmas like a year ago.
He wants to evangelize, and so that's why he has these conversations. He's hoping to convert you on the phone.
Maybe he's like, well, I just failed my third marriage. Who do I have in my phone?
Who is this Mel person? She seems nice.
Yeah.
Now, of
She
course,
asked wonderful questions and
Maybe
listened
she
so
can
attentively.
join. She can
We
join
wrap
me
this
and the
up,
boys
please.
on
I
the
want to eat my
compound.
And because she has a pause button on the microphone, she can go into peals of hysterical laughter that you will never hear on the phone call.
Oh my god!
Ah,
I need to find
Nope.
his text. I have it somewhere on here. This is
Mel,
when I
are
first
you-
found out about Kent Hovind, this was back in the 1990s, that his videos were passing around, and my brother, one of his friends was a creationist, and he said, I got this video that this guy says is something. Would you like to look through it? So he made me a copy of it, and that's when I looked through and saw Kent Hovind for the first time, and I made a point of writing to Kent Hovind to express my opinion of some of the claims that he was making in that. I describe all that in Dinomania.
Now, of course, aren't we supposed to be wrapping this up?
That's
I
true.
suppose we are. Anyway, just finishing up on the Kent Hovind thing is that he after I wrote him physically, this was in the pre-email era, he telephoned me, and he on his dime, and we talked for like about a half an hour, at which point he finally realized maybe he wasn't going to get anywhere on that, and that was the end of that. And I've not had a direct conversation other than my debate with him in all the years since.
Well, I think I don't know. I really don't think before a couple months ago, it seemed like he wasn't like prodding people to debate him, because for the longest time, people would come to him. I mean, everyone's debated Kent Hovind, but now people don't care anymore.
Big Bird hasn't debated him.
And he's going out of his way to bother other people. Like he went and bothered P.Z. Myers and
I think he may be in need. He wants to get on the big stage, and because the big stage has moved in the internet era, and he ain't on it.
Yeah, no one really cares that much about Kent Hovind anymore, and so he's kind of going like, "Hey, look at me."
Yeah, you got the new generation of younger idiots who are carrying on the tradition, independent of the old fart guy.
Mildly younger idiots.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with Matt Powell on PZ's comment section, so that was fun. Hadn't talked.
Yeah, I think that's what's kind of funky, is the fact that we're all building up this wonderful network where one of us doesn't know about Kent or the various acolytes, somebody else does. So it's much harder. I think in the last few years, it's much harder for creationists to operate in a narrow frame where only the people that are watching their videos see the stuff, so they're not spilling over and gathering like gnats critics from all over the place. But because of the social networking, we find out about this, and that connects up with that, and that brings over to there, and so it's much harder for them to keep that.
Can I call you back later?
Oof, big oof.
Well, on that note, let us call adieu for another day of Evolution Hour. Thank you, Mel, for hosting. Thank you for tolerating our digressions on science fiction movies. Quit a mess in the pit. So pull the plug on the show, and we'll see you next week.
Pull the plug.
A cute little pug. Quest for Fire. That or just bore you to tears. It was an ambitious movie, but not.
Did you watch? What was it? 10,000 BC. That movie was tragic.
Oh, it wasn't as horrifyingly bad as I was anticipating.